who can diffuse a tense situation, deliver tough news gracefully, is confident without being arrogant, brave but not reckless, generous but never extravagant. This is the type of person that everybody wants to be around and to be like. Someone who seems to have mastered the art of being a person. This may sound like an impossible feat, but Aristotle believed that while rare, these people do exist, and they are what we should all aspire to be. Virtuous. And there's a whole moral theory based on this idea of virtue. But unlike most of the moral theories we've discussed, virtue theory doesn't spend a lot of time telling you what to do. There's no categorical imperative or principle of utility. Instead, virtue theory is all about character. Rather than saying, follow these rules so that you can be a good person, Aristotle and other virtue theorists reasoned that if we can just focus on being good people, the right actions will follow, effortlessly. Become a good person, and you will do good things. No rule book needed. So
the video talks about Aristotle's virtue theory. This theory reflects the ancient assumption that humans have a fixed nature. The proper functioning means everything has a function. A thing is good if it fulfills its function, and it is bad if it doesn't. For example, as humans we need to grow and be healthy, and thus our proper functioning. Aristotle said that the nature has built into us the desire to be virtuous. By being virtuous, you know what to do all the time, you have good judgment, and you know what's right and when. A virtue is a skill, a way of living, and a set of character traits that once developed, it will lead to good behavior. You learn virtue by watching it and then doing it. Eventually, it will become a part of your character, which can only be learned through experience. If you are virtuous, it allows you to achieve eudaimonia. Eudaimonia is a life of striving. It means pushing yourself to your limits and finding success. For Aristotle, the kind of person who lives like this is the kind of person who will do good things.
Now you might notice that some of this sounds a lot like parts of natural law theory, Aquinas' theory that God made us with the tools we need to know what's good. Well, Aristotle had a strong influence on Thomas Aquinas, so part of Aristotle's thoughts on virtue theory ended up in natural law theory. But for Aristotle, this isn't about God's plan, it's just about nature. Aristotle argued that nature has built into us the desire to be virtuous, in the same way that acorns are built with the drive to become oysters. But what exactly does it mean to be virtuous? Aristotle said that having virtue just means doing the right thing at the right time, in the right way, in the right amount, toward the right people. Which sort of sounds like Aristotle saying exactly nothing. I mean, how vague can you be? But according to Aristotle, there's no need to be specific because if you're virtuous, you know what to do all the time.
It provides guidance as to the set of characteristics and behaviors of a good person
Aristotle
is
understood virtue as a set of robust character traits that once developed will lead to predictably good behavior. You can think of virtue as the midpoint between two extremes, which Aristotle called vices. Virtue is just the right amount, the sweet spot between the extreme of excess and the extreme of deficiency. And this sweet spot is known as the golden mean. So let's take a look at some particular virtues, starting with courage. What is courage?
I learned that virtue is a kind of knowledge called practical wisdom. In my life, I always admire people who have the strength to speak of how they really feel without hesitation and express themselves because I am a really shy as a person. In the video, it said that your character is developed through habituation. If you do virtuous thing over and over again, eventually it will become part of your character. I realized that you can really adopt an attitude from the person who are always with you. There was saying that, tell me who are your friends and I will tell you who you are. It's a little bit the same because sometimes you can really adopt an attitude from a person and copy them. As a teenager, there are a lot of influencers that can really affect our decisions in life. Also, I learned that morality for Aristotle it is being the best person you can be, owning your strengths while working on your weakness. For me, it is one of the things that you can embrace in your life because if you know your weakness and your strength, you can really do a lot of things and do good things to you and to others.
Being virtuous means doing the right thing in the right time and in the right place. Aristotle has argued that nature has built in a desire for us to be virtuous. Being virtuous doesn't always mean to do the good thing, but assessing the situation and doing what you can do in order to ease the situation. After watching the video, I had realized that we should not do everything as an impulse. Finding the right way to act is better than doing what you think is the right way to act. However, virtue is not something we can pick up and apply it to our lives. Virtue is learned through experiences by doing virtuous acts. By knowing people who are virtuous, we can learn through their acts and adapt that kind of living. With that in mind, I'll furthermore continue to do what is virtuous for society. I will continue to hone my strengths and work on my weaknesses.
Generous to give drugs to an addict, or to buy a round of drinks for everyone in the bar when you need that money for rent. The right amount of generosity means giving when you have it to those who need it. It can mean having the disposition to give just for the heck of it, but it also means realizing when you can't or shouldn't give. So now you can see why Aristotle's definition.
My life with virtue will make me become a better person with learning how to apply to my life by making more conscious decisions instead of making impulsive ones. Finding the golden mean in situations and making sure that maximize its potential and benefits to the receiver against its cost will truly help me become more virtuous. It also comes with how I can deliver what I see personally and know what I should be saying, as mentioned in the video. Right thing at the right time, in the right way, in the right amount, towards the right people. They also capture to always find the midpoint where there is nothing lacking and also nothing of excess. This will help me in avoiding to putting the blame in others, and rely on my judgment when the time comes, instead of blaming them to do other things which would become a factor to my decision making. It must also consider, become more truthful and more virtuous.
Virtue by watching it and then do it. In the beginning, it'll be hard and maybe it'll feel fake because you're just copying someone who's better than you at being a good person. But over time, these actions will become an ingrained part of your character. And eventually, it becomes that robust trait that Aristotle
The most important support that we need is the support that we should give to ourselves. We should have the motivation to do things or to practice things over and over again if we want to be successful. Thus, the saying, practice makes perfect. We would also be needing the support from someone who already knows what to do. They already have experiences from the past that could help us work on our weakness. By learning, our weakness could also be our strength if we know what to do. Receiving constructive criticism is also a support that can help us. We should not be easily offended by it, but rather we should accept it gracefully and thankfully and learn from it. These constructive criticisms will help us improve ourselves.
But choosing to live a eudaimonistic life means that you're never done improving. You're never to a point where you can just coast. You're constantly setting new goals and working to develop new muscles. Choosing to live life in this way also means you'll face disappointments and failures. Eudaimonia doesn't mean a life of cupcakes and rainbows. It means the sweet pleasure of sinking into bed at the end of an absolutely exhausting day. It's the satisfaction of knowing you've accomplished a lot and that you've pushed yourself to be the very best person you could be. This is morality for Aristotle. It's being the best person you can be, honing your strengths while working on your weaknesses. And for Aristotle, the kind of person who lives like this is the kind of person who will do.
For circumstances like this, I believe that by educating myself and trying to think outside the box and while considering other people's perspective instead of enclosing myself with arm-length ideas or thoughts, I can make myself hold accountable for my growth and actions. Like what the speaker have mentioned, we are virtuous human beings and that our rationality is innate, which also makes us different from other living things. We just need to enhance or improve our assessing skills, if that makes sense, by being critical, because it helps us open our minds. It contributes in our learning process on how to acknowledge and take constructive criticisms. And I believe that this is accompanied with a changed behavior that has a vision of bettering oneself. Because if it is not your goal, doesn't it defeats the purpose of making yourself accountable for your growth? This way, it propels you to recognize your goal and commit to a steady progress of yourself.